Okay, let's get started. Hope you guys can see that okay. Did I go too far ahead? There we go. All right, our master's program is it's a nighttime evening program. The vast majority of our students work full-time and have personal obligations, and it's intended for that. Our program is intended also for mid-careerists and entry-level persons. If your goal is to graduate and become the CEO fast track to the VP suites, probably not the best program for you, but our curriculum is really designed for mid-careerists. Leadership positions. Our curriculum is certainly going to enhance your management, interpersonal, and organizational skills. I think this is a huge thing that we do in our program. In a couple of slides, I put up our competencies. I had a young man that came and knocked on my door a couple years ago, and he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I literally meet thousands of students a year." And he said 2 years ago, he came and asked my advice and sat down and he told me he was considering Michigan versus Weber State. And I guess I laughed at him and I said, "Why would you want to go to Michigan?" I was just joking around, right? I would want to go to Michigan. But he had graduated and he couldn't find a job, so he was coming to look for a job. And he knew that I knew almost everybody and that I could help him out. And he said that at his program, he just got kind of a taste and a flavor. There were no in-depth competency skill sets taught. It was all surface learning, and he realized that now that he graduated and he was trying to interview for jobs. He also told me that more than 33% of his cohort, the cohort that graduated when he was a first-year student, new coming in, and after, those three cohorts, more than 33% were unemployed after 6 months. So be careful of some of the top programs that you look at. You want to make sure that they're teaching in-depth competencies. Our program is full-time, 2 nights a week. All of our courses are taught on Tuesday and Thursday nights. If any of you are familiar with the northern Utah area, the Ogden area, these are actually just taught a little bit further south, about 11 miles south, right on I-15. It's called the Davis campus. It's right by Layton City, right off that. We have 2 huge 200,000 square foot buildings that are used for some of the undergraduate programs during the day, and then almost all the master's programs teach there at night. So it's a full-fledged campus. It'll eventually be 14 buildings. Right now they've got 2 that are being utilized. So brand new buildings, it's a beautiful campus, and that's where we teach the master's program. Easy for those guys that commute. We accept any undergraduate degree. So obviously a natural undergrad program that funnels right into the healthcare is the undergrad health admin degrees as well as business. But we have varied backgrounds. We have students from construction management, English, math department, biology, and inevitably every year we get a few from nursing, rad tech, clinical lab science, those type of things. So we have a pretty diverse and varied background classroom environment, which makes it fun. One of the things for Weber is we do try to go out and recruit that diversity. I think healthcare is such a complex world that it takes different minds and differently trained minds to solve problems. So if everybody was a health admin student, we're really not going to solve that many, right? Because we all think the same. So many of our students are current COOs, mid-level managers, nursing and clinical managers, as well as physicians and allied health persons. We have individuals that have been longtime veterans of the industry that come back, and in order for them to get a job promotion, they have to have a stupid piece of paper. So there's not a lot that we're going to teach them, but they need it, and that's why they come back. Yeah?
So you need a COO without a master's?
Sure. Yep. Probably our most recognizable one is Ben Tanner, who's the current COO of Huntsman Cancer Institute. He graduated, he was a second cohort of our program. He came through the program, and he's 50 years old. Thank you. A little bit older than I am. So yeah, he came through the program a few years ago and obviously loved it and did very well and enjoys the curriculum.
So do you find your program with more people working and coming back to get the degree, or coming straight out of undergrad?
Sure, let me give you some of the numbers of those demographics. We admit about 30 to 33 students each year. I would say probably less than 10 are undergrad students that come directly out of an undergrad program in the spring to our program in the fall. Somewhere about a third, 6 to 10 of those students. There's about another 10 that have about 3 to 4, maybe 5 years healthcare experience, maybe not necessarily at the managerial level, and they make up about another third, and that remaining third is pretty seasoned healthcare veterans. So we have a lady coming into our program that she's been an RN case manager, nurse floor manager, departmental manager for almost 30 years, and she's coming back with a master's degree. So clinically, she's going to be very strong, and I don't know how you guys feel about the clinical side of your undergrad education, but you need to be. You have to be. If you're going to be in healthcare management, you have to know what diseases there are, how they interact with comorbidities, what's the primary diagnosis. So if I ask you, what is the primary root cause issue? Diabetes or obesity?
Obesity.
Are you sure? What's that? Sure. There's obviously going to be a number of tertiary factors that go into, and it could be one or the other. So for all of you, you need to be able to know this. So having a classmate that's obviously been, a strong clinician, whether it's a respiratory therapist, PTOT, or nurse, is going to be great to have them in your group. Yeah.
So because I understand that you bring in lots of people from different backgrounds, their own experiences, but in your own experience and what you've seen, do you suggest that we go out in the field and kind of learn what we can before we go, and so we have that experience to back us up and apply what we know into other knowledge?
Not necessarily, and so here's how I advise students, because lots of students have that. It's very hard, because I did this. I did a master's degree and a PhD with a wife, a mortgage, and too many freaking kids. It is hard. It is super hard. So I think if I would have changed, and here's what happened on a personal note. I graduated with an undergrad degree in broadcast journalism, immediately applied to grad school, and I was headed off to Boston University, and my first semester was going to be, my first year was going to be in Belgium, where I served my mission. And lo and behold, my 17-year-old came to life inside my wife. I'm like, dang. So we just, it didn't happen for me. So I don't know how that worked, but yeah, grad school was off the table, and I went back to school. It was about maybe 6 or 7 years after my undergrad program. So, what I tell students is, you're in the school mode. If you want to, go and do it. You might be a little bit behind in terms of experience, but that's okay. The program that you choose should be okay with that. They should allow such diversity in their program that you're going to be successful. And we do. We invite students, not all. I don't think we would accept a cohort of 35 students that came directly out of an undergrad program. But we'll take several, and you guys will do very well. The one thing that you need to be aware of is when you graduate, on paper, you're going to look fairly comparable to a COO of 20 years, right? You both have master's degrees. They're going to get the jobs that are going for 85, 90 grand a year. You're going to get the job at 50 grand a year. If your ego can handle that, then you'll do very well. So, okay. Obviously, our program allows for new students that have made the jump from another discipline or undergrad degree to make the jump into healthcare. We get quite a few of those as well. We do offer a joint MBA-MHA, which is fairly different from anything else that you'll see. University of Utah offers an MHA, but you have to do it as a joint degree. Additionally, it's taught out of the MBA school. Yeah.
Are you guys common accredited just like you?
Sorry?
Are you guys common accredited? CHA?
Yes, CAMI accredited, yep. And our MHA curriculum, as a joint degree student, the MHA is taught out of the School of Health Professions. The MBA side of your degree is taught out of the business school. We don't combine them. So unlike other universities, they will have some MBA faculty attempt to teach you MHA concepts, and that just doesn't work either. Yeah.
I know at University of Utah you have to apply to both of the programs.
Uh-huh.
Do you have to do the same thing for...
No, we have a single online application for the joint degree students. However, you are, so it's a one-time application, but you are considered by each program separately. because it's not an emphasis or a supplemental degree. It's 2 full-blown master's degrees. So you'll get two separate hoods and diplomas and everything. The way the joint degree works is students aren't required to take electives, and you pick your emphasis, much like an undergraduate major minor. So you would determine whether or not you want to do the majority of the coursework in the MHA or the MBA. So if you chose your emphasis as MBA, you would be required to fill the MBA leveling course requirements based on what they tell you might still need to do. So you do approximately 40 credit hours in your emphasis and 24 credit hours in your non-emphasis. Yeah.
Doing the joint, how long does it take?
It's about 3 years. I've seen students do it in less time than that because of the sequencing and the way that the programs are laid out. You can work on both degrees concurrently in the same semester. But the MBA is kind of crazy. They have about 350 students at our MBA. And they teach Monday through Thursday nights. And each semester is a little bit different of their course offerings. So you really can't plan in the future, is this same class going to be taught next year, this same night? They don't do that. So, whereas the MHA curriculum is taught every year, the same semester, the same night, and you can plan and progress year after year, the MBA is a little bit different. So if the cards kind of fall out right for you, you could actually finish in about 5 semesters, which we've had 2 or 3 students do that. So. Okay. Our faculty are fantastic. You'll see that if potentially you come as a student. We've got a number of faculty that have significant combined years of real-world experience. A couple of our great classes, one of our law and ethics course is taught by Dave Gessel, who's an attorney, and he's also the lead attorney and lobbyist for the Utah Hospital Association. So he has a significant presence in the community in Utah, both legally, legislatively, and with the physicians and mentors of who you want to get to know. And so he teaches an excellent course that the students always talk about and remark how well it's done. Our students graduate, and often we encourage them to go on to fellowships that are trained towards CEO and COO status. We have faculty that are former CEO and COO personnel. Our finance course is taught by a local COO at Ogden Regional Hospital, and he does a fantastic job. He did an undergrad in finance and then a master's in health administration, and has been within the HCA Corporation for many years. So, obviously our faculty are involved in research publishing, as well as community service and consulting, and that's something the university encourages us to do. For myself, for my community service and research, I work with both the Utah State Nursing Home Association, as well as I serve on the local board of our ACHE chapter. So I'm the student liaison for committee director for our ACHE chapter locally. So I work with all those guys, and I don't know how active your guys' ACHE chapter is here, but in Utah, they are super, really active. They have great events. These are our competencies. You can also find this on our homepage. We developed our curriculum from the onset, even prior to CAMI accreditation, according to CAMI national standards. So ever since the inception and the first time the program was taught, these have been involved in the curriculum. So we've broken those out into the categories of personal development, professional development, and applied skills. When the young man came to me and told me he'd been to Michigan, I showed this to him and he says, I didn't have any of this. Maybe a touch up or brush up on 1 or 2 of these things, but he had no in-depth skills. Our commitment to the student is you are going to have significant exposure to these core concepts. Mastery is going to be up to you, right? Whether or not you're getting a C or an A. So you're going to be exposed to all of these in a number of ways and cross-idea development to be able to apply all of these competencies in your own skill set by the time you graduate. I mentioned we offered that joint degree. We are CAMI accredited. Our program is a once annual admission and starts in the fall. And students apply by May 1st and are admitted in the month of May. Just this past month, and we switched it to April 1st because of some of our MBA leveling courses. But next year, it'll go back to May 1st and we'll keep it at that time frame deadline. One of the best things that Weber State offers is in-state tuition rates for all out-of-state and international students. That's done through tuition waivers that the university grants. As of today, there's an unlimited supply and dollar amount, so all of our out-of-state and international students get the in-state tuition rate. Residency is a non-issue if you come to graduate school at Weber State. Right now, the tuition is about $20,000 total for the program. It's about $4,600 a semester for 12 credit hours. So you take 4 classes a semester. Courses are delivered on Tuesday and Thursday nights, 1 night each for 8 weeks, and then you swap over on the block. So on Tuesday nights in the fall, you'll take 1 class 1 night a week for 8 weeks. On Thursday night, you'll take a different class. Then after 8 weeks, about mid-October, you'll swap and take 2 new classes. That's how we deliver our program. Yes?
So for your undergrads, for your students that come from undergrad, do you guys assist them with trying to find a decent job while they're...
Yeah, so a couple of things that we do. This is something that I help out with a lot, and I try to. We have a dedicated career services person from our college, so she'll do a ton of stuff with you guys on resume building, mock job interviews. Obviously, she's got a number of contacts. But the next step, we have excellent second-year students and alumni. They're heavily involved. If you want to be mentored, you'll ask me about that. I float your resume out there, and 10 guys will call back, or 10 women will call back and say, hey, have them reach out to me. I'd be happy to work with them. So there's a mentoring process. Obviously, we encourage our students to be involved and active in the local ACHE chapter, which is the Utah Healthcare Executives. Before most of you guys came, I mentioned I went to today's event. Our local UHE chapter had an event today at the University of Utah. We had a board meeting in the morning, and then our chapter event today was a free luncheon, which was included in your annual student fees. But also it was on electronic health record implementation from 3 different doctors at 3 different healthcare systems that were talking about their EHR implementation and some of the good and the bad. There was probably 300 people in the room today. At the table that I was sitting at were 3 CEOs. So our chapter is excellent. It's very good for our students, not for all students, but for Weber students. I'm the person to know. And I'm the one that helps them go and find and job shadow and gets, kind of some contacts out there. Yeah.
What is placement like after graduation for students who came from an undergraduate program?
Our placement statistic is 100%, but you have to understand that's a little skewed. Probably 2/3 of our students that come in every year already have an existing job. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Intermountain Healthcare, right? The Death Star. When you're outside of it, you hate it. Because it's difficult to break in. They're very persnickety about who they let in, right? And once you get in, you do very well. Many of our students already work with Intermountain Healthcare or IASIS or HCA or Mountain Star, the HCA division in Utah. So really, the placement concerns for students graduating every year are that small group that has had minimal experience. So when they come to me and they're interested in the program and they say, Dr. Moss, I don't have a lot of experience, my comment to them is, when you graduate, are you going to be pissed off that you're only going to be making $50 grand a year? So we talk about that. What's your placement prospects going to be like when you graduate? In the meantime, you got to go to ACHE. You've got to network. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to probably volunteer some time. We have lots of students that don't have a lot of healthcare real-world experience. They got a ton of academic experience, but maybe due to family reasons, or they had a really good paying job in their undergrad and they were selling cell phones and making good money. And now they're going to possibly be taking a pay cut. you know, we gotta figure out the best way to get you out there. And I'll help you as much as I can to do that. So, our placement statistic is 100%, but that's not a real accurate.
And are they usually placed in Utah, or do you have like out-of-state connections?
Mostly, yeah. We've got a few out-of-state connections. Are you guys familiar with the postgraduate fellowships? Raise your hand if you understand what I'm talking about when I discuss a postgrad fellowship. Okay, for those of you that may not necessarily be familiar, all over the country, once you graduate with a master's degree, there are many, many employers and health systems that will hire you at a fairly good wage to be a trainee for a year. It's a rigorous process, competition is fierce, but I would say any CAMI accredited program that does a good job, you're going to be competitive, regardless of where you go. Minnesota places all of their graduate cohorts every year 100% in a fellowship. We only do maybe 2 or 3, because that's not our focus. So we haven't developed those contacts. It's not that our students aren't eligible, it's not part of our program. We don't have an internship, and we don't require you to go and do a postgrad fellowship, but a lot of these degree programs do. So I encourage students to go out and you know, when you come to Utah, when you come to our program, the best circumstance for you would be to go and do a postgrad fellowship. Absolutely. So I encourage them to move away. 90% of our students stay in the local market. So Utah, the Wasatch Front, where we typically place and students get hired, and we did a significant statistical analysis on the job placements and attrition. Our local market can handle about 30 MHA graduates being placed and hired annually. 30. Yep. So, come on in. Grab a bite to eat. Questions? Yes.
Would students from our program be required to take some of your like leveling courses?
No. If you've done an undergrad health admin here, you've already completed the leveling course requirements for the MHA. Once in a while, the joint degree MBA guys are kind of Nazis. I have an MBA, so I can call them that. They may not, if you're a joint degree student and your emphasis is MBA, they might hassle you about it. I don't think they would, but they've done that to a couple of our undergrad students, and it pisses me off. But you're going to get a degree from them, so you pretty much got to do what they tell you.
What's your acceptance rate? Like how many people apply each year?
Typically, we get about 50 to 60 qualified applicants each year, and we accept about 30, 35. So this year we had, the overall quality of applicants was much higher, but we had fewer applicants this year. So we typically have a waiting list each year. In years past, it's been 14, 15, 16, 17 that were qualified and didn't get in. This year it was only about 3 or 4 that were qualified and didn't get in. So, yeah.
What's the, I guess, requirement for GRE or GMAT scores?
GMAT is a 500 minimum score, and the GRE is a minimum 153 on verbal and 144 on the quant. Yeah.
Do you provide like scholarships or assistantships for those students who, I don't know, are excelling at those different things, or what kind of?
Typically not first year. There is some money for second year scholarships. They're pretty modest. I would say it's about $1,500 a semester. And those are typically awarded for maybe the top 10 students. Some of that's based on money that comes into the department at the graduate level that the grad school indicates that we can delve out in scholarships and waivers. Nationally, there's just not a lot of scholarships and waivers and such at the graduate level. We do have one, I think we're going to continue, we do have one graduate work study that will continue to happen. But most of the students go out and find a good job and kind of pay their way through school. So, yeah. Yes?
When's the earliest that we could apply, or when do you start taking applications?
The application window will probably be open towards the end of September. Right now, we're finishing up our admissions that happened about a month ago, and I'll kind of purge that file towards the end of the summer when I'm done with it and everybody's admitted and fall has started. So probably after October 1st is when people can start. The application process is pretty easy. You can find the link on our website, and you can go in and create your own username and password, and then you can go in and out of that as much as you want until the May 1st deadline. So, yeah.
What do you look for in an applicant?
I think for the undergraduate students coming directly out of an undergrad program in the spring, they're clearly going to look at your GPA and GMAT or GRE score. That's probably going to have the greatest weight. We do require a minimum 3.0 undergrad GPA, but if it's below that, the committee's good about looking at some of your last 60 hours, your major, club participation, internships, so they're pretty flexible with that. For students that are coming back to school and they've been out for a few years, they're going to look at experience, and typically healthcare experience will be weighted more than undergrad credentials. Yeah.
So by the time your students are getting through the program, do most of them have kind of an idea as to what route they want to take, whether it's finance or operations?
Yes. Most of them do, some of them don't. And again, here's, I go back to this. In healthcare, you're going to kiss a lot of frogs. I loved long-term care. I loved geriatric and senior care. I knew the day that I was ready to punch one of my patients and their family members and drop in the F-bomb, I'm like, I think it's time to make a change. And I'd kind of worn out my welcome. And once I got into home care and hospice management, I totally found my niche. And I loved it. And I probably could have stayed there forever. So I enjoyed it that much. So the majority will have a good idea. If they don't, I'll help them. We'll find out. So, and that's okay. If you look at a typical healthcare administrator, junior administrator's resume, they're bouncing every 16 months to 2 years. There's nothing wrong with that. Happens a lot in our industry. Yeah.
So if someone were to ask you what separates your program from the University of Utah, what would you say?
Two things. I think number one, cost. Right? I think their program's about 60 grand, if I'm not mistaken. Cost would be number one, and not any more important than number two would be you can get just an MHA from Weber. You don't have to do the joint degree, and your MHA curriculum is going to be taught by MHA personnel who know for sure what they're talking about. So, yeah.
So you're saying though that undergrad majors coming in, graduating with a master's, leaving, they should be comfortable with making $50,000 a year?
If you come directly out of an undergrad program,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you'll be
50,000.
yeah, I think you'll be probably between 55 and 60 is what we've seen. We have lots of students that graduate that you're very much qualified from our master's program to be like a clinic manager. 4 doctors managing a clinic, 20, 25 overall total employees, and those guys are making about 60 grand a year.
Some bachelor's degrees can do that as well, right?
Oh yeah, if you're in the specialty tech side, sure. Yeah. So obviously the difference is experience. So we had a young man who graduated, did an undergrad in social work, had been a licensed clinical social worker for several years, came back with a master's degree. He left at 120. So because he was running a behavioral health hospital. So yeah.
Is there any certifications that students can get through your curriculum, like Lean Six Sigma or?
No, we don't offer those at all. Yeah.
Like you were saying, on paper, you may just be looking at like 2 master's degrees between 2 people, and
Sure.
then it'll just weigh on possibly like an interview. But does it make a difference to do like the dual masters? Does that carry some weight as you go into an interviewing process against other people?
I don't think so, and let me tell you why. Based on statistics and what we've seen, actually the MHA students make way more money. The market is so inundated with MBA students, everybody has an MBA. Comparatively, the current MHA students in the program is we maintain about a 55 to 60 quantity of students in the program between first year and second year and part-time students. Our MBA program has 300, 350. So those guys are graduating and they're looking at 2 or 3 applicants who have MBA degrees from Weber State. Do you think that the employer who has 3 good MBA applicants is going to say, hey, I'm gonna offer you guys more money. No, they've got plenty of people that'll take the job for less money. On the contrary, the MHA degree is quite focused, and our students make way more money than the MBA students. So I don't sell the joint degree program a whole lot. I personally, Cory has not seen the benefit of paying an extra. The joint degree costs an extra $10,000. So the MHA is 20 grand, the joint degree will be 30, an extra 10 grand in 2 semesters. Now, with that said, I don't know how old you guys are, but if I was 26, you bet I'd be doing the joint degree. It's an extra 10 grand. If I was 36, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't see the return on investment. I wouldn't see the time benefit. But as a young person, I would totally do it. Yeah.
Would you go on and get your PhD after?
Yes, that's another thing that I tell students. If any of you think that you want to go on to a PhD, I tell students, don't waste your money on an MBA, or one or the other. I mean, don't do the joint degree. Save that time and that money for your PhD. So, especially if your end result is to teach or research, yeah, go out and get the experience. You'll make way more money at a PhD level than you would have spent and returned on 2 master's degrees. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning, so I'm just wondering what your background is.
I started my career, I did an undergrad in broadcast journalism, had no idea what I wanted to do. It was just the first degree that kind of came to mind, and I took classes, and I did my internship at KSL, Channel 5 in Salt Lake City. Had a great experience and loved it. I won the Bonneville Communications Award, and every time I drive up here and I pass Rigby with the sign, right, I have to tell you guys a real fun and interesting story about me, because nobody else can say this. Bonneville Communications owns all of the church media, so they're the head conglomerate. Channel 5 is under that umbrella. So I went and applied for this scholarship on a whim, and it was based on essay and interviews. So I won the essay contest, and there were 3 of us, and I went and was interviewed, and this was a brutally hard interview by KSL TV personnel and behind-the-scenes administration, and they were not very nice. I ended up winning the scholarship. They paid me $15,000 for an essay and an interview. So I won the scholarship, and in college I dressed like kind of a scrub. I never looked good, and it was part of the rebellion for going to BYU. So they announced my name in the huge DeYoung concert hall, and it's the whole college, and I looked like a bum, and they paid me 15 grand. So I walked out, and the stairwells are on the side, and so a buddy walked out with me. He had a really nice shirt on, so we swapped clothes while walking down to the front. And so I went out, they gave me the award, they took me backstage, and Arch Madsen was a friend of Philo T Farnsworth back in the early 1900s. And this guy he had to have been 150 years old. They took us backstage, he was ginormous in this wheelchair. And I had no idea who Philo Farnsworth was. I mean, I'd heard the name. So he tells me this story. And I was just completely blown away and enthralled. And that afternoon, one of my professors gave me a book, the name is escaping me, written by Philo's wife, Pem Farnsworth. And it was the history of them. And Philo was kind of a genius, but scatterbrained, couldn't remember his way home, forgot to eat, all those kind of creative things that you guys suffer from when you're really smart. His wife was the brains behind things. She kept all the mechanics of the drawing and the little pencil thing, right? And then you keep all the measurements. So, fast forward 20 years, I'm teaching at Weber State, I'm teaching a class, and somehow we get on this subject, and one of my students says, Pem Farnsworth is in my facility as a patient in Bountiful, Utah. I'm like, shut up. And he said, no, really? And I said, can I meet her?
This pre-HIPAA laws?
Yeah. And he goes, yeah, I'll set up a meeting. So I took my book that my professor gave to me on my birthday in 1994 and had her autograph it. And I don't know if you guys have ever been in the presence of somebody who has the Spirit of God in them that you can feel. And I walked in, and she's maybe this tall, maybe 70 pounds, and she knocked me over with her katra, her spirit, her chi. I was blown away. My background's geriatric and senior care. I think there's lots of stories like that where you meet and take care of people who just have a lifetime of greatness. I worked a bit as a wound care manager for a company based out of San Diego, and I worked at all the acute care hospitals in Utah, and I was a wound care product manager as an area sales manager in the state of Utah, and then eventually made the jump to home care and hospice management. I started teaching as a part-time adjunct job because they needed somebody to teach long-term care administration at Weber. So I did that part-time for about 7 years before I started full-time teaching. So my real background is I'm an overweight pro snowboarder. So that's really what I do, and Weber State pays me to be an overweight pro snowboarder. So I got in big trouble this year, not by Weber State, but by all my families and friends, because I snowboarded every day this past winter. So snow basin. Snow basin's 20 minutes.